Good morning. Welcome to Office Hours, the show where we answer your technical media production questions. Guy, let's get straight to it.
All right, first one's coming in from Jason Beish in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he asks, has anyone else played with 3D Splat app on the App Store? It's free, does all on-device training, and it really should be tested by anyone who knows what's worth taking seriously.
Well, I appreciate you bringing this up, Jason. I heard someone mention this app earlier this week, and that is a good reminder to install it because I haven't actually done this. And I'm not entirely surprised this is being done because obviously the computational power of these iPhones with the neural processing engine that Apple keeps expanding every single year is definitely something that can't be ignored. So I think we're going to continue to see this technology evolve on the iPhone, but I've got nothing to report at this moment, so I'm going to have to play around with it this weekend and get back to everybody. Maybe see if we can do something, maybe do a little demo in after hours, but appreciate you bringing that up. Next question.
Next one comes in from Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC, asking thoughts on the new Roland V-1 4K switcher, and he's got a link here to the device.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting announcement when I saw Roland release it. It's really interesting because, anytime products are released from Blackmagic Design and Roland, they really fall into two different sort of, I guess, they have a different ethos, that these companies, right? Because Blackmagic, at least on the more affordable side of things with their ATEM mini line, they're sort of more prosumer level. Many argue that the features that many of us actually find useful with those that own it, and I know I own one. I know many people in the community own ATEM mini switchers. The ISO recording on the extreme versions is incredibly useful if you're shooting stuff. Obviously it doesn't record in professional codecs like ProRes. It records in highly compressed formats. But for people, I think doing small productions, House of Worship stuff, maybe podcasts. I do a lot of podcast stuff. The ISO recording stuff is very useful. And this Roland switcher doesn't have it, but I talk to a lot of other people doing big shows, and they always say, well, none of these professional switchers have ISO recording, so it's not really something that you really need. What did you think of this when you saw this, Guy? Because the camera, I'll let you talk about it, but the IO is very interesting on this one.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you go, okay, a lot of people say they want 4K, but do they really need 4K? And is their entire pipeline and chain 4K? And then when they say ISO 4K, I mean, you're talking about some heavy iron if you want to record 4 to 8 channels of 4K, especially at 60. So taking out the whole ISO part of it, I think it's a great little switcher. I mean, you look at it, and I've felt these buttons on their models over the years, and they make world-class products. I mean, they're no joke. These guys helped invent MIDI. They're big into the rental houses. So when you talk about the plastic, the build quality, pulling in and out, how it's manufactured, the connectors to the board and whatnot. These things, like even the HDMI inputs, you could get locking cables. That's what these little screws are above, so you could lock those HDMIs. The really interesting thing about this one is how it punches in, or they do what's called region of interest. So out of a 4K signal, you can do 1080, and then you can have two different shots. As you see here, you could have the three sitting on the couch, and then you could have the host and the maybe another co-host, and that's two shots. So you could see, you could go from the green box to the red box to the blue box to the yellow/orange box. And this was something that was built into Livestream Studio, and people loved it. So getting to have it in hardware is really cool. So you could see here, you could assign button 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're getting 4 shots out of one camera. So that's pretty cool for the $1,899 price point. So I'm interested to see what Blackmagic will come out with, because everybody's been clamoring for something like an ATEM extreme ISO 4K, but you're not going to see it under $2,000, of course. And so this different strokes for different folks, because a lot of events, they don't need the records, or they already have like a HyperDecks or AJ Key Pros or Ninjas, or they have a flow for that already. So just being able to have the switcher and have it scale the inputs. And as far as SDI or fiber, sometimes the projector or the laptop is across the stage, and you do have to do a long run. But I mean, for the price and having to buy a couple converters, it's probably well within reach. So I think they're going to sell a lot of these things.
Really, really cool. Yeah, and did you sorry, did you say the price? Because I didn't see a price on the
$1,899, yeah,
okay.
US.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's a
Okay.
bunch of apps too that go on the iPad that allow you to do a bunch of other things. That's something I didn't mention here. Is as you
Yeah.
scrub through this, you can see that that's one of the things that they're really playing up is the fact that you have all these control pads and things that are on the iPad, so you get a touch interface. So for somebody that's like a church or something like that, where they don't want to give them the control. Giving them a simpler button layout makes it easy for them to just touch. So something else to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some comments in the chat here from John Wallace is saying Roland video tools always feel like they were meant to be used by DJs. I don't agree with that. There's actually, it's interesting. I don't know about the US, but in Canada, there are a lot of production companies, and we often don't see Blackmagic hardware being used here. I know, a lot of people talk about how ubiquitous Blackmagic stuff is, but there are most production companies are not using Blackmagic stuff. I don't know in any part. I'm sure it's different in different parts of the world. But for me, as somebody who's used Roland switchers, like Guy was saying, the buttons, the build quality, there's so much to like about those products. It's not a fair comparison to Blackmagic because Blackmagic stuff, they build their stuff to a price point. They're very, very feature rich. I will give them that. But, a lot of people would rather trade features for rock solid reliability, better buttons, things that will last and, last the test of time. Right. And Guy, do you have another comment you wanted to?
Yeah, I just want to say one of the most popular switchers we've ever sold. In fact, I've talked in the past about Google ranking. We got the term video switcher. We got ranked number one inside of Google because of this video that we made that got 466,000 views. This was 10 years ago, and we sold hundreds, if not thousands, of these Roland V-1 HDs. I mean, great little switcher. And the interesting thing is with that design, we never got any returns. They were just so built like a tank. And that's what I want to talk about, is just the quality and why we saw a lot of rental houses that would buy into the Roland gear, because it's simple. You don't have to mess around with installing any additional software. You just plug it in and it just works, and you beat up on them and drop them and they still work. So something that some of the competitors don't have. Actually, I'm interested to see what OC Go has at NAB, because they're somebody who is heating up with their NDI inputs, and then Rode as well. So there is some competition in this space. Again, it just depends on what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were some other comments too about why is it Tommy Shantz is saying HDMI only. And again, I think this product, who it's actually going for is people that have smaller budgets and are probably already going to have cameras that are HDMI based. And they don't want to go through the whole expense of getting converter boxes to get it into the SDI world. And they might not even understand what SDI is. A lot of places like House of Worship and stuff like that, where they have volunteers that are using this gear, and they might, have a lot of these types of more prosumer type cameras. For example, like I've done some work in some local churches, and I see a trend with a lot of the cameras that they have. These smaller churches with smaller budgets, they have a lot of Lumix mirrorless cameras there, and they're all HDMI outputs, right? So, and one of the switchers, actually, when we rebuilt their live streaming setup, I put in a Roland V1, what's the model? The V1 HD Plus, which is just 4 HDMI ins. I think it only has one HDMI out, one or two HDMI outs. Very bare bones switcher, and it doesn't even have a USB UVC output on it. So you have to use a third-party tool or third-party piece of hardware for that. But that's a really rock-solid switcher. They've been using that thing for a few years now, and it hasn't given them any problems. In fact, you don't even need a computer to hook it up and use the controls. You just hook it up to a multi-view monitor. It's got all the menus on screen there, and you can make all the adjustments. So people really like the physical controls, which feel good, but also, unlike a lot of the Blackmagic ATEM minis, it doesn't have like 150 buttons on it, right? So if you're gonna just try to train somebody who's never done video production, a lot of those buttons are really, really overwhelming. And let's face it, even people that are experienced don't often use a lot of those buttons. We use programs like Mix Effect or just the vanilla Blackmagic software control to control that stuff because we don't need all of those buttons. There are more efficient ways of working. But I think the V160 HD is probably one of the more popular switchers. And I think maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that one has a combination of both SDI and HDMI for input. So you can choose one or the other. You can go into the switcher and assign it a source from one of those types of ports. So that's much more flexible, but it's also a lot more money to this. So again, I think Roland really knows the market, their customer base, who they're targeting that to. James Haldane in Vancouver says Roland fixed my V1 SDI 3 years out of warranty for free. So customer service. That's one thing we often don't mention is what's the after sales support of that product. And I think that's a good testament to Roland that they fixed your hardware switcher that you rely on, James. 3 years out of warranty. Not very many companies are going to do something like that. Guy, what do you think?
We've probably beat this one pretty good. But one of the other things when I had the engineer, I actually did some beta testing with one of their products once, and he said just the T-bar when he saw the Blackmagic hardware, the original 1ME panel when it first came out, he's like, that's a lot of money just for that little fader. And he's like, now look at ours and feel the quality of ours versus some of the others. And this is one of the great things about going to an NAB is I haven't gotten my hands on this particular unit, but pay attention to little things like that. How does it feel? I know a lot of people don't use those T-bars, but when you do, does it feel like a plasticky thing that's gonna not flow smooth, or does it feel like a real mechanical piece that they paid big money for? Because there is something called the BOM, the bill of materials of when they manufacture these things, and you could tell quality. I'm coming to you through a Roland little UVC device, and I tested 8 different ones side by side, and this one by far had the best color. I put it up on scopes and everything. So it's about the engineering. It's not just what you think of the I's and the O's. It's the quality, the build quality. And as James says, I mean, he's seen that the company stands behind what they make. So I really like these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing I'll say that about build quality too. I think there's a bit of Blackmagic really disrupted the market, I think, and I will give them credit for that. But I think sometimes I feel like with hardware, when people get upset about how much a product costs, it just seems like there's a bit of a race to the bottom. And I think for me, the analogy is the App Store. I remember how much back in the 90s and the early 2000s, before the invention of the iPhone, before app stores on mobile devices were a thing, we would pay for software. We would pay incredible amounts of money for software. Like, it was not uncommon to spend hundreds of dollars. Sometimes professional tools would cost upwards of $1,000. I remember, buying a license for just Photoshop alone. I think was like $800 or something crazy like that. And then you would buy, every time a new version of Photoshop would come out, you'd be, buying an upgrade license. It would be discounted, but then if you let it lapse, you got to buy a new one. So it's like, software used to be very, very expensive. And then the App Store came out, and then that really changed the whole industry with the push to have apps at 99 cents. And now, when apps initially launched at 99 cents, as soon as somebody comes up with an app that's $4.99, everybody goes, "Oh my God, that's so expensive. This is not worth it. This is awful," right? So I just feel like it's just kind of like some companies push the whole industry into a corner, and it becomes very hard. And you got to really look at what those products are, and recognize that there are differences, and sometimes it's worth spending more money. All right, I think we beat that one up. So just before we go to the next question, just a reminder, if you want to be part of the show, you are missing half of it. If you are not in the live chat, if you want to ask these questions, you can post those questions in Makana. That's our Q&A system. You can vote on them up and down. It's kind of like Reddit, and that tells us the importance of which ones you want us to answer first, and you can chat with us there. So if you don't know how to do that, all you have to do is go to officehours.global/join. That's officehours.global/join. Put in your name and email. We'll send you the link so that you can be part of our community. Next question.
JJ McKenna, Scabo, California asks, "Good morning, Chris. Did it fit?"
Chris, what's this about? What's going on?
So a little backstory. I was working on an ESP32 based project that is taking data from a scoreboard console and parsing out the data. And for reference, there it is. That's a little thing. And this is an example of it going It's from the scoreboard console into the little ESP, and then using MQTT out to a web provider, and you can see the latency is about 0.3 of a second. So pretty good. And so I put the call out yesterday, and it's like, hey, I need to find a way to put this thing in a case. And JJ's volunteered and said, hey, I'll model something up for you. And this is what he did. He modeled it up, and I printed it out yesterday. I am a very novice 3D printer, so this was like, there's some issues with the print, and that's more with me than what JJ did. But yeah, it fits like uncanny, like perfectly. It's crazy how perfect it fits in there. And you can see the case is a little. I used the screws I had, not the right screws, but I wanted to. Last night I plugged it in the case and let it run overnight and just kind of monitor the heat, because I was just a little concerned about like how much heat this would produce and whether or not putting it in the case would be too much. But the temp stayed normal, and yeah, it worked good. Worked great. I'm excited.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. I was going to ask you about the heat. I'm like, I don't know if walking away on a new 3D printing, let's just leave it. What could possibly go wrong? No, that's really cool. Next question.
Next one comes in from Ronnie Hofsoy in Tromsø, Norway, asking, can we talk about Starlink, all the types and pros and cons?
All right, Ronnie, go ahead.
Yeah, so just a backstory. In Norway, we are used to have good 4G, 5G, fiber everywhere, etc. And the other week here, we had a project for a big client of us that needed us to go to a specific venue and do a specific thing, which also includes some network and streaming, etc. And this is the venue. It's in a city in northern Norway, and it's the middle of the city. And the problem was we couldn't have neither Wi-Fi or cable Ethernet from the venue. They had huge problems in their firewalls, allegedly. And this is the location kind of in the middle of the city, and we couldn't get 4G cellular modems to work, and we couldn't get our 5G backup modems to work. And in those situations, we should probably just have a Starlink in one of the suitcases. So my question is, in northern Norway, there are not many users of Starlink, so I can't be talking to people here to ask what type of product we probably would need, and hence the question. So any information or good help from you guys would probably point me in the right direction, I would hope.
And Peter.
So I guess I would start off by saying, in a low density area, which is kind of what you were describing, Ronnie, this is kind of like where I live now, down in Yorktown, Texas. It's, as I jokingly say, the nearest neighbor's 5 miles away, and they're using HughesNet for darn's sake, which is even worse. I mean, I'm getting, latency of just shy of 75 milliseconds and 2 milliseconds of jitter on my send, and no packet loss right now, as it turns out. Now I'm on the high-end plan, which is unlimited data transfer per month. There are tiered plans that you can get, and I know if Tlock was around, he would talk about he has a plan because he has a Starlink mounted in his truck that he uses when he's traveling around New Mexico, because there are various versions of the plan. But if you're just going to use it every once in a while, there are plans that you can turn on and off if you want to. You're going to be on a Generation 3 dish more than likely. So one of the things that's important to understand is the prior generations actually had a mechanical servos built into the dish to track the satellites. They don't need to do that anymore. You just point them in a general direction, and it tells you how to point them. By the way, there's a really nice app on the phone that says, turn it this way and turn it that way, and what the clear sky outlook is. because they're now using phased array technology in it. They call it a dish, but it isn't a dish. It's a big flat panel. And it's just tracking the satellites. And so I get, it's not uncommon for me to get 400 down and 30 up on my Starlink here. And I've been using it here, and I think this caught Cochran off guard when I mentioned it again. I've been using it here for a couple of weeks now, including last Tuesday night show. I was using it, so it to me it looks good. It doesn't. You don't seem to be experiencing any problems. Now I don't know how much of that Zoom is hiding, but it seems to work for me.
All right, Guy.
Yeah, I wound up buying as a third internet for my backup of a backup when our Comcast went down, and I got kind of scared because I had a big show going on, and so I had my son run down to Home Depot and get this one, and then I got this sleeve for it so that I could get some quarter 20s so I could mount it somewhere. So my big thing is just power. How do you power this thing? Because it comes with a cable. So I'm now looking at all like these D-taps and V mounts where I've got like all these little things to build into some kind of case to get it to work. Jack Cannon turned me onto this device, which is a D-tap to USB-C. So that's the one that's the winner so far. But then there's cool things like these little adapters that you could put into the side of like a Pelican case. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is how do I transport this thing and keep it with me, keep it in my vehicle. I'm thinking about taking it to Vegas because I know last year we had some of the folks in Extra Hours come in off of Starlink and they just had this cool case. I think it was just a Harbor Freight case. So I might just run down Harbor Freight with this thing and throw it over my shoulder and figure out how I could transport it with some batteries that would fit in airline safe because this one is a 150, so I can't take this one, but I have some smaller ones and I just got to test and see how long they'll last and how many I'm going to need. So it just depends on what you're doing because a guy on YouTube, when I was first looking at buying these, I was thinking I needed the high performance, but this one actually was faster than the high performance. And I know that there's some new plan that's coming out that's going to make it so the high performance might be going all the way up to gig speed. So we'll see if that actually happens. But right now, the Mini in New York, at least where he tested it, it was faster. The Mini was faster than the high performance.
And Peter?
Yeah, I guess I would add to the point that, first of all, as the Generation 3 satellites come on board, that's what's enabling the potential gigabit spectrum, but they've actually had to apply to the FCC for extra spectrum to actually do that. So I would point that out to you. But the reality is the other thing you get to keep in mind is it comes with a router. Obviously, it comes with a power supply. Turns out you don't need either. The Generation 3 panel dish, if you will, all the smarts for talking to the satellite is sitting in that panel. What it needs is power. So if you have a power over Ethernet injector, you can put your regular home, I don't care, Aero, Orbit, whatever preferred home router system you want to have in front of it, and you're good. You don't need to do anything special, as it turns out. They provide you with a Wi-Fi router. It runs physically hot as hell. Pardon my language, but it does. I mean, you could cook something on it if you're not careful. But it's there.
All right, let's go to the next question.
Next question in from JB Windle in Chiang Mai, Thailand, asking, what is the best way to get Dante audio into an ATEM 2ME HD switcher?
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm not sure what you mean by best, like the most expensive, the most whatever, but the easiest would be just one of the Avio adapters and then then an XLR to 1/4-inch TRS into the back of that. If you're using those audio inputs already, then the AJA Dante 12 GAM, I don't know what GAM stands for, but the 12G, it's a 12G digital audio embedder, and so you can go Dante into that device, and then that device will send the SDI in. It will combine the Dante to that SDI and then send an SDI into your switcher with that embedded Dante audio.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, so as you said, this is one of the AV adapters. This is the input type, but the same goes. That is currently busy putting my Mac Mini up in the air so it gets some breathing air. And but the best one I would think is a Yamaha DM3. It's amazing.
And Guy.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on where the audio is coming from. Or do you need some good pre's or something? Because I was going to show one of the Dante audio adapters, but the other thing is, on the cheap, you could get one of these things now for $899, which is the Behringer rack. Take the card that comes from Clark Technic or from Behringer, add that inside because it doesn't ship with Dante. And that's another way that you can get 32 channels and route them all around and not have to worry about the faders, because you could do them on either an external surface or on an iPad.
Or you could just get a DM3. Just do it. With it
Or
built
just
in.
get a
Dante's
DM3
built
D, not just a DM3,
D,
not the
dash
S.
D. Exactly.
Yeah, but you
Dash
still
D.
need to get it into the switcher.
Yeah, well, you got analog outputs on that thing. All right, let's go to the next question.
Next question is Ronnie Hofsoy in Tromsø, Norway, asking, Here to Record has just released their first version of the production planners. Thoughts on, and he's got a link to productionplanner.io.
Ronnie, what do you think?
Yeah, so this is just a plug for some of the guys in the community, Mr. John Barker, and this is how it looks. So he just made a kind of a show hub thingy. It is not exactly the same, but it's a lot of production competence put into that, and he has the show details, schedules, so you can add resources. You can even have an upload, so you can have a panelist coming into your physical show to upload or kind of Dropbox similar, like uploading presentations or PDF or other material like movie clips, etc. It has a team organization and tasks, and you can also share this. And of course, you also have some budget features in this solution. So I just wanted to ask if anyone had the chance to look at it and what your thoughts was. But I see there are a few raised hand here, very few, only me. And I suggest that we take a look at that
Well, it looks like a great tool. I mean, obviously he's been around for a long time. He makes great products. Well, a lot of us have messed around with his or even relied on the H2R graphics product and the what's the other one that he has with the diagram where you can sketch up like your whole
it's called H2R gear.
Yeah, that's really useful for creating like, well, what's all the gear in my studio and where is it going and where are the labels and all that. Yeah, he solves a lot of very big problems that people have, and he's very good at coming up with very reasonable tools that are easy to use for that. So yeah, absolutely, I'm gonna have to take a look at that thing. Let's go to the next question.
Raj Shandil in Los Angeles, California asks, Streamdeck, can someone explain this? Is this for NAB? And he's got a link here to elgato.com with the Streamdeck Plus lever.
Okay, Chris, is this a real? This I don't think
I am
this is
99.9% sure this was an April Fool's joke.
Yeah. Didn't they take the page
100%.
down?
No,
I
the
think you
page
could
is
go-
still up.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I remember seeing that on an April 1st. I'm like, okay, that very funny, guys, very funny. Next question.
Well, we got to show it here. This is what it looked like.
There
real
we
quick.
go. Oh, look
Spin,
at that.
spin, spin. You never know which ME you're gonna get. You
Yeah.
know, like, hey, you could get.
Yeah, I'm gonna send this. I'm gonna send that to Mitch, to Mitch Hill, friend of the show, because he loves T-bars. He's always wanted something with a T-bar, and I think he got it right there. Big handle.
There you go.
All
All
right,
right.
what's
Next
the next
question
one?
is Leo Mendel in Richmond, London, coming to the U.S. soon. We're excited to see you. Well, I won't be there, but I'm sure there are some people in the community that will be excited to see you in the Bay Area. So go to our Discord if you want to see Leo and get together with other office hours folks. Question is home automation. I realize this is not a production topic. However, is it something we can have a session on office hours? Out of interest, how many of today's panel have experience of home automation. And he's got a link here to homeassistant.io.
You know, I can't say I have a ton, only that I've recently started playing with Apple's HomeKit, and it's really clunky. I've looked at a lot of this technology over the years, and unfortunately, one of the problems is there are all these different standards, and until somebody unifies this, I don't know what company that's going to be, if it's Apple, but I'd really like one kind of home automation framework that everybody kind of supports, like an open standard, because that's really the challenge. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I this is on my list of things to explore. Like Home Assistant looks really interesting, and it's on my list of things that to play with. But right now, no, all my stuff. I'm basically turning on lights and power switches, and that can all be done through the Amazon app, and so that's what I use.
And Guy.
Yeah, back in like 2017, when I first bought this house, I replaced all the lights with Hue, and I got little physical automation switches that could toggle my fireplace, because I opened up the fireplace wall plate, and there was like a 12 volt in there. I'm like, this is not standard, so I couldn't use the ones that were off the shelf, so I had to get a physical toggle one. And then I automated all this stuff, vacuum and the lights, the cameras, and all through Alexa. And then all these updates started happening, and I was too busy to go through and figure out why my Harmony remote no longer did this thing. And then Harmony went away, and I was just like, I give up. So I've been out of the game for a while now, hoping that something gets better. And now with all this AI stuff and MCPs and whatnot, I'm ready to dive back in, especially after Ronnie helped me with some DMX voice stuff, and it's pretty cool what you could do with DMX. Not that I'm going to put DMX in my house. I just use Philips Hue. And then Adam Tao came out with a new app that's a voice activated app, and the intelligence that's behind these shortcuts and how snappy it can be has got me reinterested in this. So pay attention to what Adam Tao is doing with his new app. And it's not just dedicated to one app. Like I added my Behringer X32, you could add mix effects. So there's a bunch of stuff that you could do with voice, but I did notice that there was a bunch of home automation stuff in there as well.
Next question.
Next one is from me, and I asked, what's the most expensive app or box software you ever bought?
Okay, well, I haven't bought a very expensive software app in a while. I think last year, okay, I did buy one. Last year I finally, after years of using the freebie DaVinci Resolve, I finally upgraded to Studio, and I'm never looking back. The Studio version has so many more tools, also their latest cutting edge AI stuff that I've been messing with, like the transcription, speech to text and speaker detection and AI multicam and all that sort of stuff. So I've been really enjoying that. Guy?
Well, you had talked about Adobe back in the day, and so back in the early days, yeah, when the boxes used to come in, I had the Master Collection. That one was, I don't remember how much, but it was a lot. And then my first foray into expensive software was Adobe After Effects, and an Avid editor had first handed me the box and said, "Learn this, kid." And at the time I was just I was a photo tech, so I was doing more Photoshop work. I wound up buying that from another friend that was in that same who was an Avid editor. He had an assistant. I bought his box copy, which came with the hardware ADB dongle. So it was $2,000 for that software, and I got it for a discount, not much, but I remember using it for a couple of years and then selling it for over $1,000. And I was like, man, software was just a different thing back then. Even Final Cut, I remember dropping $1,000 in the box. I had all the boxes over the years, and $1,000 every time. And the manuals that came in that first one, that was like substantial. I mean, it was a huge box.
Yeah, I miss the days of just wandering the software aisle and, picking up the big box and looking at the artwork. And yeah. Ronnie.
So I think I have to answer something from Microsoft. I've been a Microsoft developer for many, many years. I have these folders of software that was distributed. Let me see if we can get this in focus as well. This one is the Microsoft Action Pack subscription.
I had that. I remember that.
Yeah, so as a kind of a developer in the Microsoft Developer Network, you got all these packs, and these cost thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. But of course, there were a lot of software inside it, so it had some value to it. But normally, yeah, expensive.
Chris.
It's the Adobe. I had the Adobe Master Collection. I worked at an educational institution, so the price was super affordable at just $600. Um,
What was the
which
retail on that? Was it
I
2 grand?
believe it was. I believe that was like 50 or 60% off. So I think it was like $1,200 or $1,500 for.
Yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
was CS4 is what I had.
Yeah. And in the chat, Evan Troxel says electric image animation system broadcast version at $2,895. Now available for easy payments. All right, let's go to the next question.
Next one coming in from Hazma Kajar in Cape Town, asking, in my production, when ZoomISO plays a key role in selecting participants' video as an ISO and then apply graphics, etc. to that ISO in my switcher, I have paid no attention to the audio tab in ZoomISO. Comments?
Ronnie.
Yeah, lots of comments. So you have the option of just using ZoomISO just to select the images, sending that out to hardware using deck links, etc. But of course, audio is a really important part of the ISO, and especially here in the version 3, where audio has getting a bit more love, I would say, from the Zoom developers. And one of the I'm just going to exemplify that before I dive into the application itself. One of the things that you probably should be thinking of is to have ISO audio going out to a hardware console like an audio mixer or any type of, it could be a rack mixer and you use your iPad to control it or whatever. But having individual control to be able to adjust the timbre of the sound, of course, the levels, etc. If you don't do it like here in office hours, where we do really good measurements of levels before we kind of go into the production. If you don't have that option, you need an audio guy that is able to control this as the broadcast goes on. You can have people coming in very low. Zoom tend to kind of boost up audio and make everything kind of good, but they don't do too much with the timbre. So if you have a thin voice coming in, you can gain it a little bit or EQ it a little bit, and you can have people that are both soft-spoken and really hard-spoken. You can kind of control that in a better way. And one of the things that Zoom has done now is to be able to have multiple hardware devices or virtual devices at the same time. So here's just an example on my Mac Mini. I just put it up here for you to see. So you can, here is the speakers in the Mac Mini. This is a virtual device that I use for Zoom OSC. This is just a left-right device. So it actually just points the signal into that. I also have my ATEM constellation connected here, so I can send audio to some of those. And previously, you needed to use something like what is it called? All these applications we use for loopback and audio hijack, and create aggregated devices that put that together. That is not necessary now, so this is just a remnants. And you can route audio, of course, simultaneously to all these devices, including Dante. So if you have a Dante DM3 or other capable Dante mixers on your network, you can just decide which of these audios is going to be sent. You can decide if it's going to be the left signal coming into the Dante channel. You can have a type of settings for all these channels individually, and that way make it much more controllable, I would say, in an audio panel. And there is a lot of other usages as well. You can put that into a DAW and do multi-track recording if you needed that ISO, or you can create mixes and sub-mixes, etc. So there is a lot of opportunities. So I like that Zoom actually took this step and made ZoomISO also a lot better for audio production flows, and this is definitely something that we are going to use a lot.
And Peter.
Well, I can't agree more with Ronnie because I've played with it. But the thing that I found useful is I do isolated audio for my panelists in a webinar, but every once in a while I like to open up somebody to be able to talk from the audience. And I can bring that in separately through the audio tab on ZoomISO into Mimo Live or back out to my ATEM to add the audio at a, out of sequence, if you will, or out of band. But I can control it because I can then mute that channel almost immediately if I need to. If things go awry. And keep in mind, I'm often dealing with young kids, so things can go awry.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas, asking, what are office hours plans for NAB next week? Coverage, meetup?
Ronnie?
So the one I can speak for is that Oliver and a few people in the community are going, and they will be in one of the kind of meeting facilities, and they will be do production from those facilities using Mimo Live and a few, I guess it's NDI cameras and PTZ cameras, demonstrating the abilities of Mimo Live. And as a part of that, they will have some time to probably do cool stuff and broadcast that as well. So if anyone in this community or would like to meet with the community, I would think that finding out what times that is happening at the show floor would be a good thing to join up, and maybe we can have some really cool panel debates live from the NAB. They have really good network and they have the equipment already in place, so it's more about planning and see if that fits and if it's available to do that. So that's just a suggestion.
And Guy?
Yeah, things are coming together on that front because it is a dedicated and central hall at the NAB Convention Center. There's towards the back where Sony and B&H are is a creator lounge area, and there's two different spots. One is a theater that's like the main stage where the big presentations will happen, but then there's also something called the classroom, and Oliver has three cameras, three PTZ cameras, which I believe Ronnie will be controlling. Are you going to control those remotely, Ronnie? Yes. And so the stage looks like this. We've got, and these will be pushed into after hours into a breakout room. And if they look really good, or if there's a really good topic that you guys like, we may push them to the Office Hours YouTube channel, specifically the one that is with Renee Ritchie, which I believe is on Monday, which is, I put the link inside of the chat as to which sessions that are available that we'll be pushing at least into the breakout room. Let's see.
Yeah, the
Renee
Ritchie one's on Sunday at 11:30.
Yeah, Sunday at 11:30 inside YouTube's Algorithm 2026 edition. And then the other thing is in the Discord, we do have a dedicated channel. So as far as meeting up, we're going to try to get together and at least have a meal together for the folks with their boots on the ground. I guess, Ronnie, you'll have to just come in through an iPhone or an iPad or something and join us over Starlink, or we'll figure out something so you can at least look at the folks that are at the table. So hopefully we'll put the link inside of where we're going to meet up inside of that discussion. Also, if you don't have alerts on for after hours discussion, or AH alerts is the name of it, please put that one as a little notification, because Omar and I are going to go live as we're just sauntering around. So it'll be Omar, CJ, and I. They did this last year, so it'll just be going into after hours. So if we find a cool booth that you guys should know about, and if you guys have some questions for that exhibitor, or we'll just wander around. We'll see how it goes. We're just kind of playing it by ear. We're not going fully loaded for bear with the big, huge system this year. We're just going to keep it simple.
Next question.
Next one in from Raj, and Raj asks, could this be the last moment for GoPro? NAB new release, GP3 powered cameras, 23% workforce cut, and Insta360 innovation. And he's got a link here to the PR Newswire.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. I don't know how big the workforce is. It's hard to say. I mean, companies go through restructuring all the time, and they bounce back. So what do you make of this guy?
That specifically, I'll have to say I'm more excited about the DJI Osmo Pocket 4 that is going to be released on April 16th. And that's been what's eating GoPro's lunch. So from that standpoint, when I look at so I was just out of YouTube Creator Camp last week, and they were all packing these Osmos, and I really want to buy one because with some of these apps, you can set the PTZ. So you could set these up and then set presets, and then you're acting like you have a real full on, because it's a 1-inch sensor for $499. And I bet those things are going to go on sale for dirt cheap after the new one gets launched. So it'll launch in China. Well, they have them in China already. They should land here in the US by the end of the month. So I'm excited. If you haven't bought one, don't buy one. If you haven't bought a 3, don't buy it yet unless it's a super good deal, because I have a feeling they're going to go super cheap after this one. And it's 14 stops of dynamic range. So I mean, when you start, so that's the thing, man, is all this innovation, the competitors have picked it up, the sensors, the technology to make that dynamic range and record and log. And so those are some of the things we're going to see on this Osmo Pocket 4 when it comes out.
Wait,
so I think that's what's
14
eating their
stops
lunch.
on that tiny little camera?
Yeah,
That's
with a 1-inch
insane.
sensor
That's
for
like
$499.
mirrorless camera territory.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, with PTZ. I mean, that's the crazy part
That's
is presets. So you
unbelievable.
set a couple of them up. I mean, gosh, for that price, you could set up 6 of them, you know? It's like, when do you run out of USB
Wow.
ports at that point? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
You need a hub. That's going to be the expensive part, right? Is it a really
Amazing.
good hub? Yeah.
Ronnie, what do you think?
Yeah, I didn't raise my hand since this was a GoPro question. I have had my part of GoPros. I've given them too much of my money if I look back and think of the quality I got out of it. So a few years back, I said, enough is enough. I will not be giving more money to GoPro. So I'm a part of this workforce cut, I think. And I went with DJI and have stayed with DJI and this new pocket camera coming up, the version 4. I actually have the first one. So after that, we went with the mobile gyros from them. Been really reliable for us, and we did all the work we did. I'm looking at the version 4 now, the pocket camera. I think that is kind of a cool thing. Me and Guy talked about this in the pre-show, and using this for kind of semi-professional podcasts or videocast or webcast, whatever you call it. I think that is a cool thing. Of course, you don't have the big good bokeh that you have on bigger cameras, but the ease of use and the way it handles itself, and it's just amazing. And I have many friends that are using the previous versions, both the 2 and the 3, and they are really just they're just so happy with those cameras. That said, this being a DJI plug, not shameless, but it's kind of a good camera, but I'm not sure I would upgrade from 3 to 4 just because of some of the new features. I think the image sensor is a bit better, which on the 3 was not good enough for my requirements. Being in so far north that we have a good winter time, which is very dark and long. And having a little bit more sensitivity and a little bit less noise on those dark situations would be better. So I'm really eager to get one of those and get it testing in that situation. So I will also probably be experimenting using that as a conference camera, where we can put that kind of in the center of the tables and see if I can manage to have that remote control. So I'm looking into Ecamm's PTZ controller, which is really cool, controlling these cameras. And there are also their own apps controlling these new cameras. So I agree with Guy. Don't buy anything until the 16th.
Next question.
Next one in from Alexander Knight asking, other than director Danny Boyle using iPhones to shoot many scenes for 28 years later, I haven't heard much in the way of promo for iPhone 17 Pro being used in production. Seems gimmicky. Thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking about this lately because I haven't really heard very much, and I was just watching a recent video that Peter McKinnon put out about how he thinks the iPhone 17 is not a real camera, and actually, there's a bit more to it. He just thinks that the phone is too good, and he feels like it kind of, when professional creators start using these because it's easy, it kind of diminishes it diminishes the whole industry. I'm not sure I totally agree with that, but I think the point is somewhat valid. But I see nobody's raised their hands on this one. We got a ton of questions here, so let's just go to the next question.
Next one in from Hasmuk asking, Zoom announced the following in partnership with Anthropic. Zoom's MCP connector is now live in Claude Cowork. As a primer, explain what is meant by MCP and what does this mean for our production?
Craig.
Yeah, so MCP, if you think MCP short it's the interface for AI. If you think of a website as an interface for humans to connect to some other service, AI needs a similar sort of connection in. And typically there's a software API that things would connect to that has functions and all of that, but it's super brittle and a pain in the butt to wire. And MCP is this universal structure that Anthropic came out with that basically says, here's all the data that is contained inside this service. Here's the tools that you can use, the features, functions, and all of that, and also some resources about, well, what does that mean? And so from a Zoom perspective, be able to have your AI connect to it so that you could auto mute yourself or add features that the Zoom client doesn't already have. Guy did a whole bunch of this with Claude. I don't think it was with Zoom in particular, but with cutting and doing all that sort of stuff. So it basically extends any piece of software or any web technology into your AI so that you or your agents have more control over it.
And hold on a second, there it is, Guy.
Yeah, great explanation, Craig. It's kind of like the USB for AI. It just allows things to connect, but with OAuth, so meaning you have to log in. So there's a lot of security at the front, so people can't just go in and start moving your stuff around. The first time that I saw this, where a Behringer X32's faders started moving based on voice commands, I was hooked. So I went down this long rabbit hole and started making all these different connectors. But here's an example in Claude. When you see your backend and you say settings, connectors, and you can see I have a bunch here, but the one for just my DMX lighting will say, if I go to configure, you can see the commands that this thing will understand. So blackout, connect, fade channel, fade RGB, get status. So these are things that I can now say in natural language, save the scene, set the channel, set RGB, and it'll understand. And then as far as Zoom goes, when I heard that Zoom was doing it, if you have what's called AI Studio with custom agents, you can go in and you can make agents that'll do the same thing. So I went in and started saying, like, make the light blue, black out lights. And to me, this wasn't as smart. Like, I don't know if they're using Haiku or what. It's not a smart model. And maybe now with this new, you can see I was playing with this back in February. Maybe with this new deal with Anthropic, it'll be much better. But the one initially when I was playing with it, I'm like, okay, you have to be very, very specific in what you're going to say or make buttons, because it does not understand natural language. Because I was trying to type in chat, like, make my light blue at 50%. And it was just like, it didn't get it. So that's the thing with the inexpensive models, is they're not as smart as like Opus or Sonnet or some of the other ones. So I'm excited about this new deal because it's the unlock, it's the way of letting physical things in the real world get either connected or be able to move them. So it's exciting stuff.
And Ronnie.
Yeah, I'm going to be really quick. I played with it yesterday, and I'm aware of what it can do and what it can't do. So one of the things it can't do is to access live data and write to that live data. It's read-only, and I would think, as Hasmuk asks in the co-work section of Claude, I think it's good for data analysis. Like after a webinar is finished, you can use this to ask questions about and how people were interacting with the show, and what numbers you got out of it, and make good reports. I'm not seeing it as a live production tool yet, and of course you can, as for many other MCPs, you can use that for instructing your Claude code or other development IDEs to use this MCP as a kind of a competence center to create new skills and create and develop software that utilizes this information. So you can use it for different things, but I had problem getting live data out of it, and it can definitely not write data to Zoom.
Next question.
Next one in from Craig McFarland in Boston, Mass, asking, have you tried the somewhat snarky, open quote, can I be replaced by Claude, end quote? And there's a URL here for replacebyclaude.com.
Uh-oh, they're coming for our jobs. Greg? Okay, here.
Sorry, there you go. Yeah, I mean, some of these are silly. I enjoyed this one because it looked at my history and gave this snarky response. I don't have it just handy, but it's I thought it was an interesting analysis from AI looking at things. And I'm always interested in things that AI can tell us because we're interacting with it all the time. And there's a couple of prompts somebody said a while ago of asking your AI that you're interacting with a lot, what does it know about you that I might be surprised? And what came back was some really interesting viewpoints of my character or what I was interested in or other things that I didn't realize that it knew or that it suspected. And so having it look through my whole resume and give a pretty snarky answer, but actually very accurate was fun.
And Chris.
This is super interesting. So I'm 52%. Like it just barely I can be replaced, but it's just what it came up with about me. I am like I might take that and put that on my website as my bio. It's pretty accurate, and it's really interesting. Like it's like I said, I'm reading this. I'm like, oh, this guy is interesting, and this is me, right? It was very accurate in how it described me and in kind of a playful tone, and I really enjoyed it.
All right, what's up next, guy?
Up next is Hazma Gajar in Cape Town asking, in Zoom test kitchen, great enthusiasm for Zoom production studio. Outside of meetings and webinars, have folks produced shows with production studio?
Well, Zoom Production Studio, I guess is short for ZPS. Yes, in fact, I believe we produced the Sunday show for a long time on that tool. So that's one example.
Yeah, we've switched over from ZPS over to vMix just to give people even more training grounds. But one of the things that we noticed is that we were only getting 720p, I believe it was, to our YouTube channel. So there are some limitations. And I remember there being some sync issues too. So we chose to give people on Sundays a little bit more time to play so we get some hands-on.
Next question.
Next question is from Leo Mendel in Richmond, and he says, ground control thoughts on Artemis 2 splashdown production.
Did anyone watch that? I haven't actually had a chance to watch this stream.
Yeah, there was a bunch of us in after hours watching it last night. It's funny because one of my friends who's a camera op at NBC in San Diego, he was down there. He actually heard the sonic boom as it came down, and he was saying one of his tweets was something like, "Call me when you need some cameras that are more modern." I guess the footage wasn't that great, but it was a great experience to watch. And Vienna Tran was in there as well from Australia, and it was just cool to see Aaron Husledge and the community getting together and watching the splashdown. There's a certain feel that you get, seeing it enter the atmosphere. And there was a blackout period where it was like 6 minutes on re-entry, and we're all like, holding on with bated breath, like, are they going to survive? It's one of those things. So it's always a happy, joyous moment when they come and rescue them from the sea, and it's always cool. But it was an interesting production. You got to see the control room, got to see the different inside shot. But yeah, it was pretty neat.
Peter?
Yeah, I would agree with it was really fun to watch, but I don't know about the cameras being weak. I mean, I found it fascinating that the WB-57, which was up orbiting the reentry area, could actually pick up the Artemis as it was entering the atmosphere. It was hot enough that it could actually pick it up on the infrared camera that they had up there at like 300,000 feet, right? So they could see it at 300,000 feet. They were flying at probably 40-something thousand feet. And then watch the different the different camera shots as they were dealing with it. And I'm going to cut them some slack. I mean, those military helicopters are not designed to be carrying cameras around. They're carrying infrared cameras for other reasons that aren't necessarily associated with a space landing or a reentry process. But they were doing some really good stuff. I thought it was the more interesting thing, I think, was they had this interview with the diver team saying, "Oh, it'll take us 10 minutes to put that collar around." Well, for those of us who watched it, it clearly took a lot longer than 10 minutes to put the collar around the capsule because they hadn't planned ahead.
All right, well, that's it for our Saturday show. Thank you to all the panelists for bringing your A game, answering all these questions. And of course, to you, the producers, we call you, the people watching, listening, the producers of the show, because you're the one that drives the show. If you didn't post questions, we wouldn't have a show. So thank you for being here this morning. And of course, the back end crew that wakes up every single week to do all of these different shows. It's an incredible team effort of volunteers to put this show on. Everyone from all the different roles, from the people cutting the show to running the audio, to greeting guests at the door, checking audio levels, making sure everything looks and sounds fantastic. Couldn't do it without you. If we were to have traveled around the world to answer all of your questions today, according to the Telok Traversal, that would have been 85,000 miles. That's 137,000 kilometers and 674 millions. Bananas for scale. All right. If you got some time, jump into After Hours. We'll see you there. Bye-bye.
Rock and roll. Oh, I'm excited about this new Discord voice chat. We're gonna have voice channels.
Oh,
I'm looking forward-
interesting.
In
I'd like to test
1080p
that.
60. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. So stay tuned. Hopefully Chad can get it up today. If Chad's listening, Chad, please.
Wait, why are we doing that?
Something different. So yesterday during that space thing,
Mhm.
different people were talking, and with Discord, you could actually control the levels of each person. So as
Yeah.
the feed was there, yeah. So it's just another avenue. But the other thing you could do is 1440p if you have a Nitro account for $9.99 a month. So we get even higher resolution than we do in After Hours. And it's just another place for people to chat. The app's pretty handy where, rather than logging into Zoom, if we're at NAB or something and need to chat, so we might say go to 2, there's going to be PL2 and we can just click on PL2 and start talking. So be cool.
Any thought about doing it like the Twit network and they also, besides sending to YouTube, they also send to their Discord channel?
Yeah, that's an
Ooh.
interesting idea. I know we talked about that. There was discussion a few years ago about